Hi everyone, Jason from KC Cardinia Libraries back again for another Creative Screen Time session. Today we will be looking at creating pixel art which originated back in the mid to late 70s. It came from the invention of arcade games and the first video game console. However, the actual pixel art that we refer to in modern day terms refers to the pixel art styles that evolved from the late 70s and onwards. With that evolution of graphics, the pixels drawn to create video games became more and more complicated, and eventually the term pixel art was named as such in the early 80s. So today, I will be showing you how to create your own pixel with the online program Piskel, and introduce you to the basic tools which will show you how to draw and also do a basic animation within the program. So if you're ready, let's get started. Okay, so now here we are, ready to get started. Before that though, just to let you all know that Piskels runs on laptops or PCs or Macs, and also tablets. However, their facts state that Piskels does not run on a mobile phone properly, and in the future they currently don't have the time to translate a mobile phone version. So if you happen to have a mobile phone, if you can try and get jump on the computer or a laptop or a tablet, then that'd be preferable. But otherwise, let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is go to your browser and do a search for piskelapp.com, which is piskelapp.com, and then it will take you to this website. And you will see a few things on the screen here. And to get started straight away, I will tell you what these things are down here later. All we need to do is click on Create Sprite. You don't need to sign in or create an account or anything. Just go to Create Sprite and it will start. So this is the first screen that you'll see. This here is pretty much your pen and what you'll use to draw. And this is the pen tool. So if you were to just left click on the mouse, you can start drawing things. Now, you'll see that it's really blocky, but that's pretty much what pixel art is. It's low resolution artwork, and yeah, it's really just to use to capture the old school graphics that they used to use in video games, and also there's a certain look you can get when you're only working with limited pixels and colors, and that's why pixel art is the way it is. Is to create that particular look. So the next thing I want to show you is in the tools over here. So we're just going to go through the toolbox here and show you the more basic things that you can do. This is the eraser, and if you look at the little bracket next to each tool, that is the key that you press to use a shortcut for that tool. So if you don't want to go over here all the time, eventually once you remember the shortcuts for the tool, you remember it pretty quickly. So go to the eraser here, and we can erase the things that we didn't like. And while I'm here, if you're finding this is taking too long, going over here changes the size of the pixels that you're working with. So in this case, it's pretty much your brush sizes. So if we make it 4 pixels, you see now our cursor is much larger and we can delete this image much quicker. So the next thing I want to show you is, down here is your color palette. If you click on this once, now you'll get to see a tone and a hue chart. There's a proper term for this, but I don't remember it at the moment. So this lets you pick a color that you want by clicking into this field, and you can change the hue by dragging this down. So if you want green or blue or purple, then you can go over here. So I'm just going to pick something bright for now so everyone can see. And once you're happy with that, you can click onto your pen tool again, and make the pixels smaller again, and you can start drawing. And all I'm doing is clicking with the mouse and just moving it around. Traditionally, pixel art, back in the old days, I would figure is done just individually clicking on a block each time, but you don't need to do that with this program. So I'm just going to draw a sun. And that's pretty much the very basics for how you use Piskel. So the next tool we'll be looking at is the circle and rectangle tool. Now, if I wanted to do the sun in more of a perfect circle shape, I would get the circle tool and click on this, and then you'll see there it says shift, keep 1:1 ratio, and it says the same thing for the rectangle as well. So right now on the circle tool, what I'm going to do is click on the mouse and hold the click and don't let go. And you'll see I can make a template for this circle, and it can be like an oval shape or like a circle shape. But if you want it as a perfect circle shape, what you do is hold down shift, and that will constrain the proportions to a 1:1 ratio, which means the sides and the tops and bottoms will be identical in width and height. And to change the shape of it, just click and drag it in an angle. And if you like the circle shape that you get, while leaving the shift key held down, let go of the mouse. And now you'll see our circle is there. And you can do the same thing with a rectangle tool. Now, the next tool I'm going to show you is the paint bucket. So what the paint bucket does is, if you were to take this, and sorry, I'll go back to the pen tool for a second. If you wanted to color this rectangle in, and you just had the pixel brush, you just have to go across like this and color it in. However, if I'm doing a larger area and I'm working with high pixels, that's a little bit more time consuming, and it'd be more accurate for me to just use the paint bucket tool and just do one click and that will fill it in straight away. So just to show you how that works, I'll use a different color, and I'll pick this orange, and then I'll just click on it here. So you see what happens is when it detects a color of a different value, it will stop right there. So think of it as like a wall blocking water off, and this thing will seep into anything that's not fully blocked off. So I'll pick another color here. Let's say green, for example, and I'll paint bucket the outside, and you'll see what happens. So now that's covered everything outside except for what's inside this circle, because this has been blocked off, so to speak. So the green can't get into here. So if we wanted to do something else with that, and we can paint bucket that with red, and there you go. And now I can even do this yellow as well, and that will just see how it just follows anywhere where it's connected, and anywhere that it's not, it won't touch. And that's pretty much the basics of the paint bucket tool. So then the other thing to briefly look at is, if you go in here and left click once, you can choose your colors as mentioned earlier. However, this will remember the last few colors that you've used, so you can always click back on here if you want to reuse that color in a different spot. And also over here where it says palettes, this also shows you all the colors that you're currently using for this piece of artwork, so you can always click on these again to get those colors back if you need to use it for different places. And another thing you can use is, you can use the color picker tool as well, and that will let you pick colors anywhere here, and it will just change it back to that one. So there are pretty much 3 ways to pick the colors that you need. The next tool I want to show you is the selection tool over here, the rectangle one. And basically all I'm going to use is as a canvas cleaner. So you can click and drag this across your whole page, and once you let go, it will stay in this faded color, and that means this area has been selected. And all you need to do now is press delete, and you can clear the whole page. And to get rid of the selection, just press the pen tool again, and now you can start fresh again. And so that's a really quick way to delete something rather than erasing the whole page with the eraser, or constantly pressing Ctrl and Z to go all the way back to the start. The other easy way, of course, is if you want to restart everything again, you can also just click back on here to go back to the main page and just create a new sprite again. Or just over here, just create a sprite. So now that our page is cleared, we're going to start drawing something to animate. And we'll just make this really, really simple just to give you the idea of how it works. And then we'll move on to more complicated things after that. So we are going to use all the tools that we've learned just now to draw an image of a sun. And we're going to make sun rays shooting out of it and having that kind of animate. So to get started on that, I'm going to pick orange. And if you've not made an orange yet, then it's pretty easy. You just go into the slider here, kind of in between red and yellow, and just pick one of the ones from around here. And click on the pen tool to get out of that. And now we are going to choose the circle tool. And if you remember what we did, we want a perfect circle because it's the sun. So we're going to hold down the shift button, and then we're going to click and drag a circle. About this size will be good. And then let go of the mouse to get the shape, and then we can let go of shift after that. So the next thing I want to do is change to yellow. And same thing if you have not made the yellow yet, it's just a bit under orange, and then just come up into the upper right corner here. And this time we can click on the paint bucket tool and just fill that. And then the last thing we want to do is use white, and click on here. And if you've not made white yet, all you need to do is anywhere in any of the hues, just go all the way to the upper left in the tone chart, and that's your white there. And if you ever want pure black, it's just at the bottom left corner or bottom right. And yeah, upper left is always white. So you may think maybe use this again, but this is actually quite hard to center. So I don't suggest doing it, but rather we go to the pen tool and just draw in the white circle. And make sure it's at 1 pixel. Click on that. And then I'm just going to slowly draw this in. It doesn't have to be too accurate. And so the reason why I'm just choosing the 3 color tones is to show that you can use shading tones for your artwork, and that is actually what makes pixel art look so great for the most part, but also just so it doesn't look so bland, just for this particular exercise. And it's also just getting you to use the different color palettes and getting used to accessing that as well. Okay, so after we've done that, we come to the next step. Okay, if you've drawn your sun and it's a little bit off center, that's perfectly fine, because I'm going to show you what this tool does. And if you click on this, that will just center your image right to the middle. And I've luckily actually drawn it right in the center, so it hasn't done anything. But you may have seen your image shift, and that's fine, because that's exactly what we want. This will put anything that you draw right into the middle. So only use it if you absolutely need something to be in the middle, but otherwise if you don't, then you don't need to touch that one. So we're going to start drawing the rays for the sun. And we'll go back in here, left click on it, and we will use orange again. And make sure your pixel is at 1 again. And we're just going to draw lines, long lines at the tops, bottoms, and sides directly. And then shorter lines in the corners. As long as they're shorter than the ones at the top and sides, then that's fine. Otherwise, there's no specific size that you need to do. So now we are going to start animating it. So now that we've drawn our sun, the most important thing we need to do next before we animate it is to actually save our work. This is just for any reason. If maybe your browser suddenly closes, or your computer crashes, or you're working on the computer and you get a blackout, or someone unplugs a computer or switches it off by accident, anything at all, saving your work is the best way to prevent losing all of that hard work that you've done. And to do that in Piskel, you just go over here into this right hand side menu, and we want to click on this icon to save. And this icon, for those of you who don't know, is a disk, and it is what we used to use to store our information before CDs and DVDs and USB sticks were invented. So we can give it a title, and we can give it a description, and then we just need to give, click on this one, save as .piskel. Now, saving as a .piskel file allows you to open it up in this program and in this program only, and then you can keep editing and working on what you currently have already. So after you click on that, it's going to take us to our folders, and then we are just going to save. As you can see, I've done this a couple of times already. Click on save, and then now that is in our computer. And I'll show you afterwards how to get it out. And then if you go back to export, if you just want to save this as an image that you can send to your friends and family or upload it onto the internet, click on this export icon, which is just a photo frame. And then we can choose the resolution to export it in. By default, it will be on 1.0, and that's the resolution that we're actually working in. It means that there's actually 32 squares by 32 squares. And for the time being, because we are not making an animated GIF, we don't need to worry about this tab. We just go into this PNG tab. And I would suggest to move this up to maybe about times 10 if you're working in 32 resolution. And then we just need to go down here and save it as a single frame PNG file. PNG file is just kind of like a JPEG still image. Stands for Portable Network Graphics, and then we just save it here. And as you can see, I currently have one. I'll just save that. And then now if I right click on this, open the location, and then double click to open it, then we can see what it actually looks like on the screen. So that's how big it comes out to, as a 32 of 350 resolution. So that's still kind of small, but it's better than the tiny 32 that it would have been. So the next thing we want to look at, I will go through this afterwards, once we do an animated thing, and then I'll show you how to save it as a GIF. And then the last thing that I want to do is import an existing image. So I'm going to open up the GIF file again, the Piskel file that we saved, and just to show how that works. So go into this folder, and we're going to browse .piskel files, and this one says load a Piskel file from your computer, and that's exactly what we want. So we just click on this one, and I will click the latest one that I saved, and then once we open, we'll get another menu. So which one do you choose? For now, because we're only dealing with a new file and we're not doing anything else with it, replace your file is fine. Replace your sprite, sorry. And I will show you what this does next week in our more advanced session. So click on replace. Okay. And as you can see, I have just opened up one that I just saved in the new file. So this is how you'd go about just opening up a previous file that you've closed, and this allows you to keep working on it again. So again, after you've done quite a few changes, go back and save it again, and so you'll never lose it. And with that, we will go into the animation process. Now that we've done that, we are going to start animating our sun. And the next thing we're going to go into is this area is called frames, and we're just going to duplicate this frame. And for any of you who've done the stop motion videos, this is kind of similar, except this is just all hand drawn instead of taking photographs of. So now we have two frames, and we can't see any differences, but we actually have two different canvases right now, and changing one will not affect the other one. So I will give you an example. So another thing you want to do next as well is over here on this side, there's onion skin by the shape of this onion. And what onion skin does is it actually makes each frame transparent to the one before it. So this lets us see exactly what we're changing, and when we erase, what the previous spot used to be. So we'll turn that on, and you'll know it's on when it's yellow. Otherwise it'll be a gray color if it's off. And all we're going to do is get the eraser tool, and I just want to erase 1 pixel from each of these long lines. And then you will see that there's this faint orangey color. That is showing you what the previous pixel actually looks like, so you can see the differences there. And also, if you look into this one now, you'll see that these ones kind of look like they're wiggling in and out. What that basically is doing, it's animating these two frames for you, just to show you what's happening with the changes. So this might be a bit hard to see, but that's pretty much what's happening. It's animating these two frames. So the other thing we'll want to do is go into your pen tool and grab orange again, and we just want to extend these ones by 1 pixel. And then we are going to duplicate this frame again. And now we are going to use the eraser again and delete another pixel from the long lines. And go back to the pen and add one more to the shorter ones. And we're going to duplicate another frame and do that again. So while we got the pen tool anyway, we'll extend the ones in the corners by 1 pixel again, and we'll use the eraser again and delete the tops and side ones by 1 pixel. And then for the last time, we're going to duplicate this frame again and go back to the pen tool and add one more to each of these. And delete one of each for these. So, if you look over here, you can now see what's going on. Or if you click on this and just use the cursor keys to go up and down, you can actually see it animating, just pressing the arrow keys up and down. And that's pretty much it. So let's make it a full frame, a full looping sequence. So for full looping sequence, what needs to happen is you will need to draw the animation again so it matches when it comes back up. Because right now, if you look at the preview, it just looks like it stretches out and then it clips back to the first frame. And we don't want that because that's not smooth. We want to make it so it looks like it's endless. So we need to redraw these again and make it match back up. But rather than redrawing all, there's an easy way to do this. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so just to explain better between the jump in animation from frame 5 to 1, I've actually gone up here, and if you highlight this area here, which I unfortunately can't at the moment because my recording bar is actually blocking this very specific spot I need, you'll see like a ×1 and a ×6 thing. If you click on that one and make it larger, you'll actually see the preview larger, and that's what you can actually see. So from the last frame to the first, it suddenly just disappears. And so the easiest way to get a looping animation is, rather than redrawing all of those frames back in, all we need to really do is copy these frames over backwards so it cycles through itself again. So the easiest way to get the layers going in reverse is we're just going to go here and we're going to duplicate this frame, and just know that it will make the new copy directly underneath the frame that you've copied. And we are just going to click on this cross here and click and drag it to move it to a different frame, and we want to move that down to the very latest frame, and we just keep doing this until we go all the way back to frame 2. So now we need to copy frame 3, and now that's been pushed down here, and we will click and drag this down to the very bottom, and then now we'll copy frame 2. Yeah, this might get a bit confusing. You might muddle up which frames that you've copied, and that's fine. You can just review your animation afterwards and delete the one that's incorrect. So now I'm going to copy frame 2, and that's been pushed down now, and I'm going to click and drag this and put it to the bottom frame. I didn't quite move all the way there. That's better. Okay, so now that should loop around perfectly. So when you look at this here, and we can make the frame rate higher now. So now you can see it's smoother. The bouncing back and forth of the rays, it doesn't just suddenly go here and then bang, back straight up to there. So if you want to get a looping animation that just looks natural, then copying the frames in reverse is the best way to do. Just remember, you don't need to copy the first frame again, because that will just loop back to the first frame, and that's exactly what we want it to need. Otherwise, your first frame will reappear twice, and there'll be a slight pause for a very quick second. And that is basically how you animate a pixel in this program. So it's really, really easy. For those of you who really want a tricky challenge, here's one for you. So if you see in the upper right corner here, I have made the rays of light spin around and shrink in and out as they spin around, and I've also made the sun pulsate, going small and large, small and large. So see if you can work that out. It's actually quite tricky, and there's a bit of thinking to involve, planning and thinking involved in that. So yeah, after that, I'll come back and show you how I did it, and then we can go on to the other few exercises that you can try if you want to after that. Oh, there is one more thing that I did forget, which I keep forgetting things. If we go up to the Piskel logo up here and click on it, and just note that make sure you save your work first before you leave, otherwise it will just forget everything. Even if you try to come back through the browser, you need to open up the file again. Leave. Now back on the main menu, you'll see some of these things down here. You can actually click on these to open them and then see how they were made frame by frame. So let's take this one for example. So as you can see, if you move down frame by frame, you can see that they were just colored pixels that were changed frame by frame. And it's the colors that they pick that makes this one really great. And also, you can edit these ones too if you want to. So you can just play around and see how that changes things. So we can open up another one very quickly. And let's take the Stormtrooper for example. Stormtrooper doesn't animate, but you can color over this and do things with it if you want to. So yeah, go into the menu, check those out, and play around and see what you can come up with, because they give you very good ideas on how to animate things as well. So how did you all go? Did you find that was easy, tricky, challenging, very difficult? I'd say it's somewhere between challenging and difficult. This is actually quite tricky to do because your brain has to take in so much, and you have to try and guess what each frame is going to do and needs to be done to get the effect that you're going for. So everyone's going to have a slightly different way that they approach this, and that's absolutely fine. You might see me do something that you go, oh, well, that works really well. Maybe I'll try and do that. Or you might have come up with a method that makes mine look very difficult and clunky. So whichever way, as long as the end result is there for the time being, then that's all we're worried about. So I'll show you how I go about doing it. And to break it down, you can either just focus on the rotating and shrinking rays and leave this until later. Once you have all the frames, you can edit it afterwards. Or you can try and do it all in one shot, which means there's more that you have to think about, but you won't have to do so much fiddling around afterwards. So I'm going to try for the second option and make the sun pulsate along with the spin at the same time and see how we go. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that onion skin is turned on because it's absolutely vital, and also we need to make sure that we duplicate the layer before we do anything to it. Frame, sorry. Layers is something else we'll go through next week. And then so there are two ways you can go about this. You can either start animating all of these first and then worry about the sun at the end and just edit all of those individually in the frames afterwards, or you can do it both at the same time. The only thing is, the more things you try to handle at once, then the harder it becomes because there's more things you have to think about. It's kind of doing a stop motion video where you're trying to animate 5 different characters doing different things at once. So it just becomes hard to keep track of who's doing what. One easy way to keep track of this is to just actually try and draw it out on a piece of paper of how you'll animate each frame and uses that as a guide to follow, and that makes it much easier. So with that, I will start. First thing we need to do is get the eraser and make it slightly larger, just so it can erase things much quicker. So for this one, we just have to remember that we are making the long ones small, and then the small ones will come back up again. So I'm going to choose orange, pen tool, and then 1 pixel, and as you can see here, it's already animating. So we're just going to use like a 12 directional points for where the lines are going to sit, and so it'll be like a clock. So the next lines we're going to draw will be in between the previous ones. Okay. So next one is going to be same but 1 pixel shorter, and then this one is going to be shorter again. Be shorter just by a little bit, and then this one is going to be even shorter, and then this one is going to be shorter again, and then this one is going to be even shorter, and then this one, yep, and then this one. Nope, this one needs to be shorter. And there we go. And I'm going to duplicate, oh sorry, before I do that, I am going to delete the most outer color on the sun, which is orange. And because we need to be precise, the single pixel is fine. And then I'm just going to use the paint bucket tool to paint this in with the orange that we still have selected. And after we do this, we will need to choose yellow from our palette color, which is on the right side here, and then go back into the single pixel tool. And just give those 1 pixel fill as well, just right to the edge. And now we can see that it's starting to animate already. So I'll keep going on with that, and then I will come back and show you what happens, because this is still going to take a little bit, and then we can see the results again. So fast forward, and now I've pretty much finished off another one for a second time. This is just slightly different, but it's pretty much the same thing. And basically, it's just repetition. It's doing the same things on different frames, but just drawing them on different surfaces, at different parts of the canvas. And it's also just trying to keep in mind what was the frame before, and what are you doing now, and what needs to come next. So if you can get all that in your head, then that will make things much easier. But again, feel free to do basic sketches on a piece of paper and refer to it, because that will make things easier. So after we have done that, and if you have gone and tried it, we can now go and save it. So to do that, we are going to export the file. And this time we are going to choose a GIF file and leave it at about ×10 again, that's fine. And loop repeatedly, yes, and then download as an animated GIF. I'm just going to put Sunny Animate and save, and you can also upload it straight to a public URL. And then I'm just going to open this, and then we can see what it looks like from a computer. Sunny Animate, double click, And there it is. That's what it'll look like on the internet or using your computer. So that's really, really cool. Then the other thing we can do as well is just to go to the disk and save as a .piskel. And same thing, you can name this as probably the same animate, just so I know it's different to the other one. And that is pretty much how you animate something in Piskel. We'll do one more simple piece. It's going to be similar to doing the sun, but it'll be a little bit harder in regards to the fact that we are going to try and animate something. But this is really, really simple as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and do a Space Invader from the very old classic video game, Space Invaders. And it was pretty much just about aliens moving down the screen, and they got faster and faster if your ship couldn't shoot them all, and then you'd get killed. But we are going to make up our own, and it's pretty basic. It's basically just has a body, eyes, antenna, arms, and legs. And we are just going to make those animate in a really simple way. So, first thing we're going to do though is, we are going to move up here and just make this times 6 and turn this toggle grid on. And what this actually does is, when I start drawing, you will see how many pixels it takes to make that particular thing that I'm drawing. So that might be easier for you to follow. And again, you don't need to follow exactly what I'm doing, just the basic body, eyes, antenna, arms, and legs, and that's all we need, and you can make it anything at all. So I'm just going to pick a lighter green color. You can pick any color you want, but lighter green color is easier to see, something brighter anyway. And then with that, we're going to turn on onion skin on the right over here as well. And we're going to use a new tool that you've not seen yet, and that is the vertical mirror pen over here. And if you click on that and give this a shot, now start drawing somewhere on the left or the right, and you'll see it will mirror it exactly on the other side. So that is a really cool tool. So, and now you can see the grid tool working, and that's showing you how many pixels that takes. So I'll just Control and Z to go back to erase that. And the reason why a vertical pen mirror tool is useful is because back in the old days, a lot of game characters, when they were facing forward, they were exactly the same from their left side to the right side. So this saves a lot of time of drawing both sides pixel perfect when you can just use a mirror tool that does it straight away. The only time you'll stop using it in that instance is if a character was holding something in their left or right hands that was different to the other side, then you'd manually go back and choose this pen and add it in later. But for now, a Space Invader is mirror exact on left and right side, so we can use this tool. So we'll start by drawing the body. So all we're going to do is just draw a body shape anywhere at all. I'm going to make it a bit kind of, yeah, that'll do. And if yours isn't quite in the middle, press this one here and that will shift it into the center. And also just make sure you draw it large enough so there's room for the antenna and the arms and legs that are going to stick out. So next thing we'll do again is move over to the toolbox and click on the paint bucket tool and just click on the empty space to fill it straight away. And then we are going to go back to the mirror tool and just draw some antenna. That will do for now. And some arms. So I've just done 2 by 2 squares. And then for the legs, I'm just going to do like that. And then like that. So very, very simple. That's all we needed to look at the moment. And using the eraser tool, we are going to draw some eyes. So round about there, and we can't mirror this one, so we just need to be able to count the pixels if you want it to look exact on the other side. And you can give it mean eyes or you can give it happy eyes, that's completely up to you. So this one's starts right at the first antenna. And again, you don't need to copy what I'm doing. You can do your own thing. And as you can see, it will be pretty straightforward to animate. So basically, that's all a Space Invader has. 2 eyes, antennas, hands, and legs. So what we're going to do next is make sure onion skin is turned on. If it's yellow, it means it's turned on. And then we are going to duplicate this frame by clicking on this paper copy logo, icon. And now we have 2 of them. So here comes the tricky part. We're going to need to think about all the pieces that need to move at the same time and how that's going to affect the frame. So what we do next is we grab the eraser. We're going to go grab the eraser on the left, click on that. Oh, and before we delete anything, which is very, very important, we need to go over to the frame and duplicate it before we make any changes. Don't forget that, otherwise you'll be deleting your own original image. And again, make sure onion skin is turned on. And so what we're going to animate next is, I'll change this, sorry. This antenna is going to go up and down. These arms are going to go up and down, and these feet are going to go up and down. So we're just going to work on 2 frames going back and forward. And because it's only going to be 2 frames, we are going to slow this down to about one or 2 frames a second. We'll see how it goes. We'll leave it at 1 for now. And make sure onion skin is turned on again, and that will be yellow if it's turned on. So we will start erasing the bits that we're going to change. And just remember, the faded bits is showing you what frame 1 looks like, so you can use that as a reference. So I'm just going to delete these. Okay, so going back to our pen tool, oh no, sorry, mirror tool. I'm just going to make these go up like this. And now you can see in the preview that it's changing. And then the next one is, this was 6 pixels. Now here, yep, going up and down. Oh, and just real quickly, if by any chance you start drawing something with the regular pen tool, and then now you go, oh, I didn't mirror it, and it's going to be a complicated thing to try and do on this side, then there's a really easy way to go around that. Just go back to the vertical mirror pen tool and just repaint those areas again. And then you won't have to worry about not being able to match up the pixels. In this case, it's fine because these ones are very simple. But for something that's a really, really complicated image, then yeah, this way would be easier than trying to work it out on your own. So, and that is pretty much it. So now you have an animated Space Invader. You can change up the frames per second if you want it to move faster. For those of you who didn't do the stop motion studio videos that we did last time, frames is pretty much how many times an image is shown per second. And this is basically saying we want to see 6 different frames per second. So the higher you go, the faster it will be. And how many frames you choose will depend on how many frames per second you choose will depend on how many frames of animation you're actually using and how fast you want that to look. So that's pretty much the basics to doing this. We can add some color, like more shading and color into it afterwards, and that's up to you how far you want to go. You can color the eyes in, you can give it tone and shading if you're good at doing that. If you are doing tone and shading though, I do suggest, if possible, to delete this frame first and just work on this one, because this is an easy one to animate. It's easier to get all your colors and tones and shading and everything in first, and then copying the frames and animating it afterwards. Otherwise, you're going to have to make those changes for every single frame that you've done. So it's easier to copy those across first. But in this case, because it's only 2 frames and it's a relatively easy animation, you can delete this one and add more color to it and animate it again. And Otherwise, that's pretty much our Space Invader. And as per always, for those of you who want a trickier challenge, I've just quickly done this, and all I've done is animated it with a couple more frames, given it shading, and also I've made the eyes go from neutral to angrier, or nastier anyway. So see if you can do that. And then if you're finding all this kind of simple and you want something trickier, well, next week's sessions is going to be a little more challenging. So for those of you who are finding this kind of tricky at the moment, feel free to watch next week's one and see how you go. Give it a shot if you want to. And for those who want something a bit more complicated, then next week's one is right for you. So here is just a quick example of some of the other files that I've created while I've been playing around with Piscals. So this is just a very simple one, testing out facial expressions and seeing what I can do with it. And that's just pretty much all the frames that I've used. So if you have a look, this is very similar in terms of the idea that I had for the Space Invader. Like even I had the highlights and the shading that are kind of the same. And that's kind of where I got the idea from, just from doing this. And then next one we have is a butterfly. Initially, I wanted to try a butterfly for all of you to do as like the sample animation, but once I actually started doing it, it was actually very involved, and this is actually quite tricky to do. So for those of you who are up for the challenge, then by all means I'll show you the frames real quickly to show you what it looks like. And that's basically all you need to do, and then you just reverse the frames again until it goes back to the start. Next one, this was actually one of the first ones that I did, and it's actually just Spider-Man. He's getting his spider sense, and he's just squinting to say, oh, there's trouble. And again, you can look at the preview from up here as well, but over here I'm just showing you the frames in case you're curious to see what I actually did. So that flashing is done just by turning the frames on and off in between layer. Sorry, making it invisible. And next one I did is, this was probably the latest one that I did just the other day, and all I've done to make this animate is just to make the tongue slightly longer and shorter, as you can see from here, and that makes the dog look like it's panting. So that's really cool. And again, you don't have to animate everything if you're just doing pixel art anyway. So this is another test that I did, and this was actually the first time I used the mirror pen tool to see what it was like, and it works really, really well for characters that are really symmetrical on both sides. So this is Wolverine, of course, from X-Men, and then this is just my dog. This is also one of my earlier tries on Piscals, and this is what my dog actually looks like. He's called Checkers, and I just tried to see if I could do it, and yeah, it looks really nice. And again, it doesn't have to be about characters or people or things. Like this is one I just quickly did just now, and you can even do something that looks like the beach, or anything, scenery, a plant, a flower, anything at all. Characters just give it more of a focal point, I guess, but just like a piece of paper, anything goes. Up to you what you want to do with it. And this, for some of you who may know, is the car from Back to the Future, the time machine. And I have not actually drawn this out of my head because that would have been very, very hard to do. I'm not familiar enough with the design of the car to know how to do that. And instead, I've actually imported a photo that I found on the internet into this program, and I've traced it using it as a reference. I will show you how to do that next week, because it does make things much easier when you're trying to reference a shape for something that exists in real life. That's very, very hard to get right. And then lastly, this is actually one of the earlier ones that I did again. And if you have a look on the right here, and I'll cycle through the frames as well, it's actually Wolverine holding his hands up, and then his claws pop out of his hands. And if I would cycle through the frames, you'll see this faint thing in the foreground, and that's actually using layers. But layers I will go through next week, because that's one of the more advanced things. Layers becomes another level of something that you need to keep an eye on. And that's just highlighting the other layer. But otherwise, do feel free to just play around and explore what you can do. And there are many things you can do. And again, it's up to you whether or not you want to animate things or just do a still work of art. So that's pretty much it for me for this week's video. Thanks very much for watching, and feel free to check out other videos. Just do a search on YouTube for Casey Cardinia Libraries, and in case you've missed it, we had an awesome stop motion video segment last time, and be sure to check out the first video for that one to get you started and see what else you can do from there. Thanks again, take care, catch you next week.